without a doubt, out of favour with the UFC. You know, you pull out of a main event, the first show of the year as well, big main event. You pull out of that on a day's notice, a couple of days' notice. It's not the best look. But for Arman to then take all that time out, for Arman to take all that time out and come back and look as good as he did against Dan Hooker. And let's remember, Dan Hooker had a lot of time out of the octagon as well. I think 2 hand surgeries for Dan Hooker kept him out of the octagon for a prolonged period of time as well. But like I said, Arman Tsarukyan just bullied Dan Hooker in there. And I thought that we would see Tsarukyan come out, shoot early, get Dan Hooker down, and dominate Dan Hooker on the floor. Because with the greatest respect to Dan Hooker, he's not the best off his back. If you look at the losses that he's had, you know, Islam Makhachev, that dominant loss was as a result of a submission, and that was early. That was 2 minutes 25 into their bout. I think when he loses to strikers, it's because he gets blown out of the water. When he loses to wrestlers, it's because he wants to strike with them, and then the wrestlers are just too savvy for that, and they, you know, Islam Makhachev, Arman Tsarukyan will just take Dan Hooker to the ground and dominate him on the floor. I thought this was a really, really good performance. I think, I think it's clear that I think that Arman Tsarukyan's performance was fantastic. He outstruck Hooker. He was the heavier man. He's the heavier striker, sorry, on the feet. His top pressure was fantastic. And I think something that's really made me think that he can. I'm going to go on to talk about a potential fight between him and Ilia Topuria, but something that really made me think that he is the next contender without a shadow of a doubt is the way that he got out of the guillotine in the second round from Dan Hooker. Dan Hooker was obviously threatening the guillotine every time Arman tried to take him down. But just as it was getting a little bit tight, he cinched, he spun around and he ended up in top position, which eventually led to the finish. Fantastic groundwork from Arman Tsarukyan. Really, really good. But what's next? Because we, as UFC fans, are greedy. We always want to know what's next. We can never sort of sit and enjoy a win. You know, last week we already talked about what's next for Islam Makhachev. We already talked about what's next for Valentina Shevchenko. What's next for Arman Tsarukyan? Because as far as I'm concerned, it's a title shot or nothing. And I don't want to be waking up this morning as Justin Gaethje because, as far as I'm concerned, I've got no interest. I know Gaethje said, I'm either fighting for a title or I'm retiring in my next fight. Well, see you later, buddy. I don't need to see Justin Gaethje in a title fight again. I think will this be his second title fight or his third title fight? For me, he hasn't done enough to warrant a title fight. He's coming off a 1 fight win in a rematch against I think was it a rematch? I can't remember if Gaethje's already fought for Zeev. I believe that he has. Yeah, of course he has. He's coming off a one fight winning streak. He fought Charles Oliveira for the belt and he fought Khabib for the belt and he won the interim lightweight title against Ferguson back in the day. He used to be a very regular fighter, twice in 2017, twice in 2018, twice in 2019, twice in 2020, once in 21, once in 22, twice in 23. But since then, once in 24, once in 25. He's not going to compete again, obviously, in 2025. And I just got no interest in seeing Justin Gaethje in that title picture. So that kind of rules him out for me. I want to see Arman Tsarukyan versus Ilia Topuria. And for me, it's a big statement. I think that it's the best fight that the UFC can put on as far as a competitive fight is concerned. I think it's the best fight the UFC can put on at the moment. I do. I think that it's the most competitive, it's the most intriguing, it's the most entertaining, it'll sell. I just think that is the fight that the UFC has to make next. But I don't think it's the fight that we're going to get next for Ilia Topuria. From what I understand, from what I'm hearing, Ilia's ready to go. He's ready to go. He hasn't fought since June or July last year. June. He hasn't fought since June of last year when he obviously knocked out Charles Oliveira to win the belt. Islam Makhachev is now vacated the belt. He's out of the division. He's the welterweight champion. He's going to be competing at welterweight. I think the UFC are going to want Ilia Topuria to open up the new era of, I think, is it on Paramount, I think, the new era of the UFC on or not on pay-per-view, sort of, the post pay-per-view era, should we call it? I think they're going to want Ilya to open that up, and I think they're going to want him to open it up against Paddy Pimblett. There's a reason that Paddy has slowly but surely been making his way higher and higher in the UFC rankings. Undeservedly so, in my opinion. With the utmost respect to Paddy Pimblett, he's moved up a position to. He's now number 5 in the division. He's got one win over people in the top 15, and that's Michael Chandler in number 11. Sorry, and if you look at Michael Chandler, he's a good fighter, but prior to Paddy Pimblett, he was 1-4 in his last 5 fights. Paddy, with one win over Chandler, is now ranked number 5 in the division. There's a reason that he's ranked number 5 in the division, because you can sell champion versus number 5. Maybe even champion versus number 4. Maybe he even goes higher than that. They also have the sort of history between the two of them, that they don't like each other. They had a little brief run in this week. I think that that's the fight that they're going to make. And I know that Arman Tsarukyan is more than he. Like I said, that is the fight that I want to see in the UFC in 2026. Ilia Topuria versus Arman Tsarukyan. For me, the most logical thing would be Paddy Pimblett versus either Justin Gaethje or Charles Oliveira. Arman Tsarukyan versus Ilia Topuria. Winners face off against each other. You have got Max Holloway in the lightweight division, with obviously the win over Dustin Poirier. I mean, Max Holloway versus any of those guys would also be entertaining, but I'm not sure if Max is going to make a proper run at the belt, especially with Ilia holding the belt. He's obviously got the knockout loss to Ilia at featherweight. But for me, the most obvious thing is Ilia Topuria versus Arman Tsarukyan, Charles Oliveira versus Paddy Pimblett, Justin Gaethje versus Dan Hooker. Gaethje, like I said, one win doesn't do it for me. He was scheduled to face Dan Hooker, I believe, at some point. That one never materialised. But I do believe that the January 26th numbered event, it's not a pay-per-view anymore. I do believe the January 26th numbered event will be headlined by Ilia Topuria facing off against Paddy Pimblett. Arman Tsarukyan's next fight has to be for the belt. There's no denying it. It has to be for the belt. And whether that's against Ilia Topuria or Paddy Pimblett, whoever holds the belt, the next time Arman Tsarukyan is scheduled to fight, he has to be fighting for the belt. The time plays against him a little bit, in that I think if Ilia said that he wanted to go again in February or March, I think Arman could make the turnaround. We saw some stuff online that he was maybe struggling to make the weight. How would he be making the weight, a couple of months apart? 65 days, 64 days, I think, until March the 26th. So it's a fairly quick turnaround. And Arman, he's a big guy. We saw it last night. He's big. He's shredded. He's the picture on my right shows it. He's a very big guy. But I think the UFC are going to go down the Paddy Pimblett route, which to me is baffling. The UFC, in my eyes, should and always has been the best fighting the best. I think Arman toys with Paddy Pimblett. I think Ilia Topuria toys with Paddy. The Arman last night, I think, toys with Paddy Pimblett, and the Arman last night, I think, gives Ilia Topuria the toughest fight of his career. And this is a guy that's been in there with Volkanovski, Charles Oliveira, Max Holloway, some of the greats. And I think that Arman gives him, if Arman Tsarukyan turns up like he did last night for a potential title shot against Ilia Topuria, I think it's Ilia's toughest fight, because that was the most well-rounded version of Arman Tsarukyan, I feel, that we've seen in the octagon this far. The lightweight division is very, very exciting, as is the welterweight division, with this man right here, who After the performance last night, I don't think he deserves the title shot based off the performance itself. After the call out itself, I think he may have spoken himself into the title picture. Ian Garry defeated Bilal Muhammad by unanimous decision 30-27, 30-27, 29-28. Fantastic on the takedown defense. His back didn't touch the octagon canvas once. Bilal tried 7 times to take him down, didn't touch the canvas once, which is a great sign going into a fight with someone like Islam Makhachev. If your takedown defense is already looking that good, Islam Makhachev is going to look to take you down. So can Ian Garry stay on his feet against Islam Makhachev? We'll have to wait and see if they even fight. The leg kicks, the sort of teeps to the knee and the leg kicks were fantastic. I think he knocked Bilal off his feet at one point with a leg kick. I thought the first round was really close. I actually scored it the first round to Bilal. I think he began to land the bigger strikes. We obviously had the eye poke. I'm going to talk about that in a second. But I think the first round was close. I think the second round, Ian really began to find his range and really began to do what he does. And I think the third round, Ian just dominated. I think he landed the far, far bigger shots. He was a much crisper striker. I thought it was a lot closer than maybe a 30-27 or a complete shutout. But then he rocked the mic, and that is something that I absolutely love. Realistically, it's Shavkat Rakhmonov next. After that, it should probably be Michael Morales, and then maybe Ian Garry. But with the performance, Ian Garry slipping down that pecking order of who's next for Islam. But with the performance on the mic, he may have literally talked himself into a title shot. All depends when Shavkat Rakhmonov can come back. Does Shavkat need another fight? His last win was against Ian Garry, so it wouldn't make a lot of sense for Garry to leapfrog him. But at the same time, does Shavkat need I mean, in this welterweight division, there's no warm-up fights. They're all killers. But does he need a bit of a warm-up fight before he can take on Ian Garry take on Islam Makhachev? Because Islam's a pound-for-pound number one. He's an absolutely quality fighter. But like I said, Ian Garry, I think, has really spoken himself into a potential title shot, and he's exciting. He tries to sort of sell the Makhachev and Khabib and him and Conor relationship. I think that's a very clever angle to go down, because we know that the Khabib versus Conor fight sold, and it had the life sold out of it. I think he's still got a lot of holes in his game, Ian Garry. I think if he faces someone like Islam will get him to the floor, with the greatest respect to Bilal, who I think is a fantastic wrestler. You know, we saw with Jack Della Maddalena how well Jack did against Bilal's wrestling and how poorly Jack did against Islam's wrestling. The way that he pulls out of range with his head really, his head quite high and his chin quite high, worries me. As a, if I was an Ian Garry fan, I'd be worried about that. But it's an exciting potential fight, because he's tall as well, Garry. I think he's 6'3". He's got a 74-inch reach advantage. Whereas you compare that to Islam, who is, let me double check how tall Islam Makhachev is, because I can tell you now he's not 6'3". 5'10" with a 70-inch reach advantage. So could Ian keep Islam on the end of those jabs, on the end of those kicks? If he can brutalize the legs of Makhachev, if he can keep those teep kicks to the knee going, if he can, I mean, what was so good was the 2-on-1 the 2-on-1 takedown defense for me and Garry. Every time Bilal got him in a position where he could potentially take him down, he managed to get his back to the fence, and he was 2 hands, bang, straight on the wrist of Bilal Muhammad. Really, prevented the Bilal in being able to complete the takedown. I thought it was a fantastic performance for me and Garry. Weird going on with Khamzat backstage. I think I don't know what that was. I kind of agree with Garry that Khamzat should have maybe just allowed his friend to have the spotlight. Allowed Arman Tsarukyan to have the spotlight. I just thought it was a bit weird. I don't really know. They're different weight classes. They're not gonna fight each other. I don't. Yeah, it is what it is. One slight gripe I have with the eye poke in the first round. Bilal Muhammad has a horrific history of being poked in the eye. Leon Edwards, we've all seen the clip and the picture of Leon Edwards, his finger sort of almost pulling out the bottom eyelid of Bilal Muhammad, crying blood and the like. I thought Rich Mitchell handled it really well, referee Rich Mitchell. The first eye poke in the first round, I'm not really sure the doctor quite understood what to do. But Rich Mitchell, brought in the doctor, asked him and then brought in the doctor and asked him the doctor for a rag, a towel to wipe the eye. The doctor came in, didn't bring in a towel to wipe the eye. Rich Mitchell demanded that he goes and gets one. Absolutely fine by me. Gets one, gives it to Bilal. Bilal then uses that to not only wipe the eye, but wipe the blood away from the cut that's on the bottom of his face. Now, I think that needs to be looked at in a little bit more detail. I don't think that should be allowed. I'm not sure if it is allowed in the rules. I'm not sure if Bilal has got away with one. But I thought that the referee handled that fairly well. If it was up to me, that would be a point deduction. It's an eye poke. You intentionally, as Ian Garry intentionally, poked him in the eye. Whether you tried to poke him in the eye with your hands on purpose, or whether you were just a little bit lazy in not closing your fist, you poked him in the eye. It's a point deduction for me. The second one, which I believe was in the second round, I thought the referee did a fantastic job. The hands come out. It's not an eye poke, which is the most important thing here. It's not an eye poke. Ian Garry has not landed with his fingers like this. He's landed with his knuckles. And I mean, it's strange because it's in between a fist and the fingers being out. He's landed with his knuckles kind of like this into the eye of Bilal Muhammad. A fair blow, a risky blow for Ian Garry. You're landing with your hands like this. It's a risky blow. I think he was more sort of pushing away. Referee stops the action. It looks in real time. It looks like an eye poke, and I don't have. I'm not mad with the referee for stopping it. Referee stops the action, calls immediately for an instant replay. Sees that the instant replay shows that it's not an eye poke. It's a legal blow. Right, everybody out. I need to. You don't get any time because it's not an eye poke. It's a legal strike. I want everybody out of the octagon, and I want to restart the fight straight away. Really, really good from Rich Mitchell. Really, and that is what should happen. If you think a potential eye poke, and the referees are looking out for these things. They're not just in there for the sake of being in there. They are looking out for these things, potential eye pokes. And in Rich Mitchell's defence, that second one, it looked like in real time. Ian Garry is fast. It looks like there's a potential that he's gone like this instead of like this. There's a chance that that could have been an eye poke. Stop the action, check the tape. It's not an eye poke, right? Off we go straight away. No more time, Bilal. I thought it was a really, really good piece of refereeing from referee Rich Mitchell. Moving on, they were the two sort of main talking points for me. Arman Tsarukyan dominating, Ian Machado Garry dominating. Both men potentially next for title shots. A fantastic, fantastic night for the UFC. A fantastic night for knockouts as well, and fans of people going unconscious, because Alonzo Menafield was separated from consciousness from Volkan Ozdemir, and this reminded me of Volkan Ozdemir's sort of come up in the UFC. You remember, I think he got a title shot off the back of 2 wins. So I'm just looking now; it's off the back of 3 wins. He came in, he got a split decision win against Ovin St. Preux, against Misha Serkinov, 28-second KO, against Jimmy Manuwa, 42-second KO. Then he got the title shot, and it kind of went downhill, and he never quite lived up to that expectation. But this is his first finish in under 2 minutes since that Jimmy Manuwa one. He knocked out excuse me, he knocked out Johnny Walker early, but he's coming off the unanimous decision loss a year ago. Well, it's a year today to Carlos Ulberg, which he didn't think that he'd lost. Took a year off, came back, and he was really good. He was landing the left hook, and he landed the knee, then he landed both, and knocked Alonzo Menafield out. Really good from Volkan Ozdemir, and that's the kind of win for Volkan Ozdemir that will give him a lot of confidence, because Alonzo Menafield isn't, he's not a bad fighter with any stretch of the imagination. Bai versus Jack Hermanson was a tough fight to watch. I'm going to come out and say it now. I want Jack Hermanson to retire. Um, I don't like saying that, but he looked dreadful on the scales, dropping down to 170 for the first time in a 33 fight career prior to last night. He's not young either. He's 37, I believe. Jack Hermanson. Let me just double check that because I don't want to call him older than he is. He is 37. He's also coming off the back of an absolutely brutal knockout loss in June, so 5 months ago, to Gregory Rodriguez. Who's managing Jack Hermanson and has told him, you're coming off probably the biggest knockout loss of your career. I tell you what we'll do is we'll let you recover for a couple of months, and then we'll get you on a diet that absolutely drains your body, makes you cut an extra 15 pounds than what you're used to, and then we'll put you in there with a heavy hitter in Orobalai. I don't like this management from whoever's managing Jack Hermanson. He was out of it. He was trying to fight everybody in the octagon for a long time after the knockout blow was landed. From Mighty Beckett, it was a great knock. He landed straight on the ear, separated Hermanson from consciousness. He was out when he went down, and then he landed that extra blow. I want to see Jack Hermanson retire, and Orobai is a good prospect now in the welterweight division, coached by Uriah Faber. I think it's exciting times. What I was doing on Wednesday and Thursday was I was working my day job. I wasn't jumping on a flight to go and fight in Qatar on very, very short notice, having to cut down to 265 pounds. And then on Saturday, what I was doing is I went out for a meal with my girlfriend, and then we went to see a comedy show. I was not going in there and blasting Shamil Gaziev out of there in 1 minute and 22 seconds. The same cannot be said for Waldo Cortez Acosta. For me, a man who is up there for the fighter of the year. 5 fights, 4 wins, 3 knockouts. Fantastic year for Cortez Acosta. And I think that you will see this man fight for a belt in 2026. He had a slow. I mean, he had 10 months out of the octagon before his first fight of 2025. Went in there, knocked out Ryan Spann in the second round, beat Sergey Spivak by decision, lost unanimous decision to Sergey Pavlovich, bounced back in that strange fight with Ante Delija last time out. When I say last time out, that was 3 weeks ago. He then jumped on a plane on a couple of days' notice to come in there and face Shamil Gaziev, who is not an easy man to beat. He's coming off 2 straight wins. Let's just say that it's not meant to be for him and Sergey Spivak. I'm just looking on his Tapology record now. They were scheduled to face each other on May the 17th, again on June the 7th, again on November the 22nd. It's not meant to be. Stop booking that fight. But Waldo Cortez Acosta, he's quick, he's fast, he speaks fantastically on the mic. I think we'll see. I can see it being. We could even see it being a headliner in March in London. Volkov has headlined in London before against Fabricio Verdum and against Tom Aspinall. Waldo Cortez Acosta versus Alexander Volkov is the fight to make, in my opinion. Both men are on the brink of a title shot, but Waldo Cortez Acosta has got the great thing for him of being a man who hasn't lost to either Tom Aspinall or Cyril Gane, whereas Volkov has. I think number 1 contender final eliminator between those two, like I said, potentially in the main event in London. And that's your title fight for June, July, or August next year. Cortez Acosta, who I think will beat Volkov, against the winner of Aspinall versus Gane too. Fantastic performance. And that's the kind of thing that the UFC likes, stepping in there on short notice. Yeah, I'll do it. I'm higher ranked than I believe he's got to be higher ranked than Gassiev. Yeah, he's ranked number 6. Shamil Gaziev number 11. Yeah, I'm higher ranked. I'll risk my ranking because if I go out there and get blown away in a minute, you know, I'll drop down a couple of rankings without a doubt. Why not? Absolutely fantastic. And he got a performance bonus. Great to see. Somebody else who got a performance bonus, and it was great to see him win, was Horiguchi. 9 years out of the UFC, and it's not like he hasn't been active. You know, he's been fighting for Bellator, he's been fighting for Rising. Has he been fighting for? Yeah, fighting for Bellator, fighting for Rising. His last UFC bout was against Ali Baga. I can't say his name, but you know who I mean. And he left the UFC on good terms. You know, he's coming off a 3-fight winning streak, and he's turned up against Tagir Ulanbekov, who himself was 17-2 at the time, 2-fight winning streak. 4-fight winning streak, and it was just a fantastic performance. It really was. He just dominated. He wherever the fight went, it was his. On the feet, it was his. On the ground, it was his. And he obviously finished it with, I think it was rear naked choke. Yeah, rear naked choke in the third. Fantastic performance from Horiguchi. And now, you know, he did call out the champion. He's on a 6-fight winning streak across 2 promotions. He's 35. I think Horiguchi could seriously make another run at the flyweight belt. I'm just looking at the rankings now. You've obviously got Pantoja as the champion. Number 1, Joshua Van. They're matched. Brandon Moreno and Tatsuo Taria are matched for the same card, UFC 323. I think it's 323 next month. They're matched. So, you know, just going to move this around and make it feel a little bit nicer. There we go. Didn't notice that, but it is what it is. Yeah, so you've got, I think obviously he needs another fight. Amir Albazi or Brandon Royval, and then a title shot for Horiguchi. Fantastic performance. As did Luke Riley. Luke Riley, UK fans will know about Luke Riley. He's 26, I think. Let me just double check. Yep, 26 years old, 12-0 now. Finally got a UFC contract. You know, scheduled to fight, and I think he had some visa issues. He was scheduled to fight in the Contender Series last year. He made one more appearance for Cage Warriors earlier this year, got the call, and he's a finisher. 12, like I said, 12-0, 9 wins, all of them by knockout. He's an exciting fighter. Trains out of Next Gen, which is probably the best gym in the UK at the moment. You know, Paddy Pimblett, back in the day, Molly McCann, Luke Riley, Shem Rock, who I'll go on to talk about in a second. He had a tough first round. Bogdan Grad did really well to sort of put Luke Riley on his back, make it a little bit boring. But I think that was almost good for Luke Riley because it sort of flushes out all those nerves. And then as soon as the second round starts, every MMA fight starts on the feet. Luke Riley comes out, lands a big left hook, several ground and pound punches, punched his way to a 50k bonus. Fantastic performance from Luke Riley. I think we'll see him in London. I think we'll see him on a number of fight nights. Don't know if the visa issues will stop him getting into the US again. That's something to keep an eye out for. But if, you know, I think it would work how the UFC used to put Gunnar Nelson on the same cards as Conor McGregor because they were training partners. I think this would potentially work for Luke Riley being on the same card as Paddy Pimblett. So if Paddy does compete on that January card, get Luke Riley out there. There's a whole host of guys, 145 pounds in the UFC, you know, not ranked, sort of lower down the rankings that Luke Riley could face, and that it would make for entertaining fights. I'm not going to go through it. I'm just looking now that there's a lot of fights for Luke Riley in the UFC at 145 pounds, all of which could certainly be Billy Q, for example. I think that would be a great one. Nate the Train, Daniel Santos. I mean, is Jamal Emmers still in the UFC? Jamal Emmers, yeah, he fought a couple of weeks ago. Jamal Emmers. I think these are all potential fights for Luke Riley, but let's not run before we can walk with Luke Riley because he is young. He's 26, but fantastic debut. Nicholas Dalby picked up a good win. Almabayev, lovely guillotine choke. I think he was unlucky not to get a performance of the night bonus, but Alex Perez, the fall off is it's shocking for Alex Perez. From getting that title shot, I mean, he's had one of the strangest careers, I think, in UFC history. You've got to say. Davison Figueiredo title shot in 2020, submitted in the first round. He then had a series of 6 pullouts. Some his fault, some not his fault, but it is what it is. Then he loses to Pantoja, and then another 3 pullouts. Then he loses to Mokaev, bounces back with a knockout of Nicolau, then another cancelled fight, and then gets an injury and loses. Then another cancelled fight. Now gets submitted. It's the strangest career I think I've ever seen in UFC history for a very talented guy. It's a shame these things happen. It is what it is. Alex Perez's career, I don't think, sort of worked out how he thought it would work out, but these things happen. Really good performance by Yakhaiv. I butchered the pronunciation. And Ismail Nordiev. Again, the pronunciation's questionable. Overhand. I think he would have been expecting to get a bonus for that knockout of Ryan Loader in a minute and a half. Sorry. These things happen. Shamrock didn't live up to expectation. I saw a lot of people online kind of pleased with the demise of Shamrock. I don't really know why. He's it is what it, I'm seeing. I'm just going that Shamrock can't box. He can't grapple, and nor can he defend strikes. Shamrock fraud checked. Shamrock is no good. I mean, I don't get the hate towards Shamrock. Shamrock has been on Twitter for years talking about how he smashed the entire division and then gets dominated in his UFC debut. These things happen. Shamrock is a good fighter. He's now 12-2-1. But he fought a really hot prospect in Alayev. Do I think Shamrock is going to be a world champion? No chance. Not in a month of Sunday. So I think he's going to be a world champion. Do I think that he needs to? And I've listened to the Fight Disciples this morning, and they're saying that they want Shem to sort of stick out of the spotlight. Maybe do a little bit of media, but stay out of the spotlight. Maybe fight on an Apex card. I disagree. Respectfully, I love the Fight Disciples guys. I've been a listener for 10 years. These or 9, however long, years and years and years. These are the guys that really got me into podcasting. But I disagree that Shamrock should sit out for a while. He's 32, which isn't old, but he's not in the sort of best place in his career. He's coming off, he got he's another guy that almost sort of spoke himself into the UFC. Coming off a split decision win against a journeyman who at the time had a 15-9 record. It didn't really show up in his debut. With that being said, you have to consider the quality of opponent that Shamrock went up against, and the opponent was quality in Aliyev. Like I said, I think Aliyev goes on to do great things in the UFC. He's 11-0 now. I think he's 25. Let me check. 25 maybe. He's 24. Yeah, he's born in the year 2000. Yeah, he's born in the year. He's 24 years old. He goes on to do great things in the lightweight division. I think the size of him will move up to welterweight as well. Topuria picked up a unanimous decision victory against Al Makan, who's a tough operator. But other than that, I think it was all about the main and co-main events for me. The performances from Arman Tsarukyan and Ian Garry. Like I said, I want Arman Tsarukyan in a title shot next. without a shadow of a doubt. Ian Garry, I'd watch an Ian Garry title shot as well. I think that would be an intriguing matchup between him and Islam Makhachev. As for this week, keep an eye out on MMA Sucker. There's lots going on as always. I will return next Sunday to have a little preview for UFC 323. Sorry. The last pay-per-view card of the year, the last pay-per-view card of this era. Whether the UFC will ever go back to the pay-per-view sort of model, I'm not quite sure, but I'll be breaking it down. 2 title fights, a series of interesting fights. I don't think it's the strongest pay-per-view we're going to see this year, but I've got a lot planned for the end of the year. I always like to do a big roundup show. But yeah, we've got a lot planned for the channel. Gearing up towards the end of the year. So keep an eye on MMAsucker.com. Keep an eye out on the MMA Sucker YouTube channel. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I shall catch you next week.